short introduction. We are delighted to be joined by Joe LaSorsa, protection specialist at LaSorsa Associates. We're joined by Ricardo Karakadze, Senior Director, Global Maritime Security at the Carnival Corporation, Bill Peeler, CEO of the Peeler Group, and Joe Gehr, CEO at Technon Strategic Security Consulting. It's a pleasure to welcome you all virtually to Miami, even though you're in Miami and I'm not. It's great to think about the MSS topic in the round, and I would argue that perhaps many events that group together security experts in the cyber world may not think of executive protection, corporate security enough, but there's no reason why you can't work together. And the purpose of this panel is to look at where you can do that and how threat intel could perhaps be that glue. So I guess if I start off with you, Bill, and I work my way around, give us a flavor of how corporate security or EP has evolved, especially after Corona.
I think that, our executive customers, the customers that we actually serve, they're still reluctant, but they've become more acceptable as security becoming a default need, in my opinion. We continue to, this involvement as providers will need to become more of a help desk for them, rather than the field operational activities.
I like it. So even in the physical world, you're value-added advisors, which is sort of the same terminology in both sides of the house. Joe, nice to welcome you. How has EP, harnessed the use of technology?
So, to incorporate the past two questions, EP and corporate security over time has become more integrated, as I would say, to agree with Bill there. It's become more integrated, more acceptable, more understood that it's required, and more of a value-added service. Throughout COVID, it's more shift to a residential process where we're more focused on RSTs, and that most of our clients, at least, are doing a lot more virtual naturally. And the technology that has come into play there has been a big shift for us, because when we used to focus on a lot more on the physical side and travel security, now we have to be more technologically sound based on those needs.
I like it. And technologically sound doesn't mean that suddenly physical security specialists have to become hackers. It just has to mean that perhaps we know who to ask. I like it. Ricardo, your job, of course, is spans a few different areas of corporate security. Can you give us a little bit of a flavor of how your work has been going on, despite COVID and that adoption of technology?
Sure. So it's been a little bit different for us the last six to 8 months. We've halted, as background, Carnival has about 100 ships operating globally, and since the stopping of guest operations, we've had to repatriate over 100,000 employees, and that's been the first time anything in that large measurement has been conducted. So over the last 4 months, we've had to move ships around and get folks back to their homeland in a process that no one's ever seen before. Technology hasn't really played a big part of it. It's been the old school engagement with local government officials and national government officials to make sure that everything's in place. And so as we've shut off the spigot for guest operations, we're getting ready to turn the spigot back on. And then we have to deal with the process of getting crew members. And as background, we have 160 different nationalities and crew members. So we have to figure out how do we get the crew members back on board a ship so we can start our operations again. It's difficult in managing the whole process, the operational process on the HR side, but also on the insider threat side. We have folks that were previous crew members, and then we're hiring new crew members that it's difficult to get some background checks on them. So as we restart our operations, our major concern will probably be insider threat.
Okay, insider threat, which is nice. Well, not nice. It's not nice, but it ties into things that we've been talking about throughout the day on both sides of the house. So yeah, and that's kind of what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to find synergy, common ground. Joe, nice to welcome you. You know, tell us a bit about yourself, just where you're coming from, because I know that you, Joe, you know, you look at many sides of the house. How has corporate security evolved for you?
Hi, Phelim. Great to see you here. So basically, we've been talking about for several years already about something we call proactive security approach. And I just did a podcast with the Chris story about this.
Oh, nice.
One of the topics we talked about, yeah. So to give you one of the acronyms we use there, for example, is something we called CHIP, right? Which is comprehensive, that's the C. And that means you have to take care of all the physical and technology and human factor / procedures, training elements in place, right? Then the H is holistic, right? So it's physical, it's cyber today, and it's EP. Everything on the corporate space is, you know, different sides of the same coin. Okay. Then intelligent, right? So if you go to Sun Tzu, right? You protect everything, you're protecting nothing. You have to be very pinpointed at what it is you're protecting from, right? And then based on that, understand, you know, which will be the last part, the P is prevention, right? So again, going to Musashi, know yourself, know your enemy, and know the environment. So think about, you know, have to really understand what the adversary, his methodology for, you know, cycles of attack, et cetera, and see where in there you can actually tap in to fold these things from happening. And then I'll give you the 30-second end of the story is that you really have to go and look into the whole area of gathering, you know, hostile gathering of intelligence, et cetera, hostile surveillance. And then that's where you can actually tap in your intel resources to understand, again, what's coming at you and where you can create time and distance, organizationally speaking, in all those three areas to make sure that you're one step ahead of the bad. That's nice. In a nutshell what we've been doing, and it's been increasing now, right? Some of these threats are now a little bit more tangible.
No, well, nice, and we'll get into threat intel, and it's important that we flag, you know, a lot of the cyber world has found it a little comparably difficult to say that an employee losing some, you know, company data is on the same level as them getting kidnapped. It's just a bit of a different dynamic. So that might be a bit tricky, but we, you know, love to see some comments. We already got some nice comments in the audience. Bill, is threat intelligence or actionable intelligence the area where both physical and cyber should collaborate or could best collaborate? Bill, what do you think?
It is. It's a start of where the collaboration, you know, and I think it's become more important. You know, it's still the same. You know, it's to help with the strategic plan that we've created for an operation, but you know, the timeline I think has changed. You know, normally, you know, 72 hours, within 72 hours, actionable intelligence is what's needed. I'm not sure if it you know, which direction it's taking right now, in my opinion. But yes, it is a start of the collaboration, absolutely.
And Bill, do you think that finding out that some malicious customer is coming your way is the key place where someone's going to say, right, I'm going to call Bill as a cyber expert. I'm going to suddenly need Bill and his advice. Have you found that as a service increasingly important? Maybe all the private investigation angles too.
Absolutely. I mean, we just actually had that occur yesterday, you know, where we were contacted, where they were trying to handle a threat from other avenues, and but they needed our physical presence there. So, you know, immediately it brought us together on the issue. Okay.
Well, that's immediate kinetic response, which is something that perhaps cyber cannot do. You can't do a kinetic response to cyber legally. It's not really what they do. But what about you, Joe? What is the MSS of the future going to look like? Is it that the SOC is what's going to combine both sides of the house, or what sort of service do you envisage?
Well, I see it honestly being a lot more dispersed, that service, and that's just by the way that we run it. The SOC puts a lot of things together, but what we find is with connectivity and modern technology, we can do almost everything, you know, in the field. right? So we have our agents in the field coordinating, performing intel services, performing investigative services, and we're all doing that collaboratively. So the SOC keeps us all on the same page, but everybody's got an input, everybody's got a job to contribute, and it's the best way to do it. Even the intelligence, a lot of the times that we do continual training for our guys, we're training them on current trends in intelligence gathering, and these are field agents. And why do we do that? Why aren't we just training our SOC and otherwise? To do that is because the more people we have running that, the wider net, the wider spectrum we have to gather information and get intelligence. So again, I think it's short answer is yes, but it's a little bit more complicated than that with the way things are running now, where everybody has to take part, if that makes sense.
No, it does very much. Bill, you wanted to jump in on the SOC question. What are your thoughts, Bill?
You know, that's where we're taking and investing a lot of time and energy right now, is with our SOC, because of the remote responsibilities that we're now undertaking, where we would be there present physically in the past. And, you know, and prior to the pandemic and all that going on, we have found that that's where we start breaking down those silos by bringing everybody into the room that has a play into something. You know, I understand where Joe's coming from with, you know, the connectivity that we do have available in today's times, but at the same time, we have to we have other assets or resources available to us when we are in, at least in our operations center. You know, where we're looking at traffic cameras, when we're looking at different other resources that we have available. And I believe, you know, between intel, cyber, and, you know, field operations, you know, physical operations, I believe that's where we can marry those together or start quelling this better together, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because, you know, some of the really large physical man guarding providers are dabbling in bundling cyber, and it has been apparent that some of the very large cyber providers are dabbling in physical. It doesn't mean that you have to integrate into one megalith, but perhaps the question of the SOC as a service is in fact the one place where people can actually, you know, you're protecting a principal in Egypt and you want some dark web threat intel on the fact that people in Egypt know about it, then yeah, I mean, I can see that. I can see that. Ricardo, what do you think? Is the SOC as a service the glue? You know, is it where convergence will happen?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So in the maritime industry, I think we've been lacking in regards to establishing that connective tissue between the physical and the cyber. On the physical side, we have a number of international flag state or port nation state requirements and regulatory procedures we have to follow. So those are pretty simple for us. But what we don't have, not until January 2021, is guidelines on the cyber piece. And so what we're learning to do is basically establish, we already have a fleet operations center that takes a look at your typical physical issues, but either security, weather, ship related. And now we've established a SOC to take a look at not only the IT piece, which we seem to have a really good grasp under, but how do you incorporate the operational technology piece from the ship? So I think it's layered, right? So I think the SOC needs to get a good handle on our side in regards to the IT OT piece, and then how do we lay that over onto you know, incorporating that with the fleet operations centers that we do have. So it is important. I think it's the key for the future, but it's going to take a little while to bring them both together.
Well, you know, Ricardo, you mentioned, because you've got a great wealth of experience in public and private sectors, that perhaps the future of corporate security is going to look a little bit different. What's your vision, Ricardo? I mean, it doesn't have to be specific to your current role, but I thought it'd be nice to ask you because you've got quite a lot of experience.
Yeah, so I mean, just like everything else, everything is evolving towards the cyber side, right? I mean, that's I could have 3 years ago, our conversation would have been my 1, 2, and 3 primary security concerns are a lot different than they are today. And 3 years ago, I would have looked at it and said, hey, cyber, this probably doesn't pop the top 3. Maersk has changed that. Recent ransomware attacks on the maritime industry has that. And so, no, we have to flip this on its head, and we have to make sure that our primary focus area is on protecting our assets and our reputation, and that heavily leans on the cyber side. And the other piece on the maritime side, especially on a cruise leisure industry, we rely heavily on host nation physical presence, right? Local police, first responders. That's how we do our risk assessment and risk profile, right? We can't do that in the cyber domain. We're really beholden to our own capabilities and what we are able to outsource to address and mitigate those concerns.
I like it. Well, we've got lots of comments, and I'm trying to keep track of a lot of comments. Let's go to Joe. Joe, Brian asks, do many of the physical security products have connectivity, and is that the primary challenge of connecting them into the SOC? Is it that we're having this discussion because EP and corporate security is connected today? is that what it's all about, Joe?
Which of the two Joes?
Joe Gehr. Oh, that's a good point. Yes.
All right. Very good question. So yeah, today in the Internet of Things world, everything is interconnected, right? But if I go back again to the data and the Intel question you were talking about a minute ago, and it's relevant, we have to remember that even though the gathering of the collection capabilities have been improved significantly, right, with all the AI, advanced sensors, cloud computing, analytics, all of this, we have to remember that at the end of the day, data is not intelligence, right? You end up with a ton of data, and like somebody here was saying, we still have to convert that into actionable intelligence, right? And that's where the whole proactivity of what we were talking about before comes into play. So I think being able to define it, I think the term in English is RFI. I'm used to it in Hebrew, like request for information, right? What exactly are you looking for that is going to be operationally important for your operation, right? And then how to sort and filter all that noise that you collect in the Intel process to give you something that is helping you protect your assets, etc. So I think that's where it comes, all boils down to. And that can be, again, in the cyber side, it can be in the physical side, for sure it can be in the EP side as well. I
like it. And either in response to something the other Joe wrote, but Michael says bingo. So I like that. I think that's really good. Bill, can you give us a flavor of what you will want to offer as a service in the future? Because it's all well and good us talking about potential, but would you ever say to yourself, you know what, I'm gonna bundle in some cyber threat intel to for my clients? Is that even realistic, Bill?
I believe that it has to become realistic. We have to find a way to make it realistic, because I think Joe Gehr had said the holistic approach. We require that for us to be competitive. We're going to need that. It's just finding a way to that point.
And I guess it's going to be a case of hiring. I mean, when we do the close protection events, we have the presentation on the technical close protection officer, and that person is like the person in Mission Impossible with all the equipment. I don't know, Joe, are you getting calls to train people in that way? Is that even something people are asking for?
Well, we see something where we've been working on this for a long time, actually, is blending things like TSCM into executive protection and that knowledge, that general knowledge. That's something that we've been incorporating through training for several years, and something that we've seen an uptick in up to COVID. And even during COVID, we've had a lot of companies sending their agents to us for that training, and it's something that they want to add in as a service. We're there. We should be knowledgeable in that, and it should be something that is definitely considered, especially today. So.
Yep, definitely. And what's nice for me as the outsider looking in, I've seen the debate that we had back in March when we had our online event as to now what. I guess we could reframe it as what are we going to do, through to right. Let's seize these opportunities. The people on the cyber side in the audience, many of the managed service providers have found new revenue streams in training and they found new revenue streams in security. So maybe this is reflected in the world of physical security as well. New opportunities, not just the home guarding type experience, but cyber threat intel as a service. It could be what's really popular. Ricardo, where should we look for when we do this type of panel again? Should we explore, because I mean, actually next week I have a corporate security modernization forum for the tri-state, right? So I'm hoping to do a bit of market research by asking you, can we do this sort of topic for the next few months, or should we take it in a new direction?
I think we can do it. I think the topic lives for the next few months. I think we're not done trying to understanding what the impact is on current events in the world. I think there's a lot more to learn here, and I think companies are learning that they're going to have to change and adapt. So I think there's definitely a shelf life for it, but I think there's room in the next couple of months to continue the dialogue and see. And I think there's a lot of lessons that we learn from other corporations that are beginning to adapt for companies like ours that could learn on how they're adapting. I think the conversation of remote work, right? We're a global corporation, for example. We have multiple buildings throughout the world. What's the value of having everybody come into the buildings and work like we used to work, or do we change and adapt the Google approach or one of the other corporations that have basically said, hey, we're going to do remote working? What does that do for our infrastructure, both physical and cyber? So lots to learn here, and I'm fortunate that I have a leadership that's very interested in this.
Nice. And we got a nice comment in the audience. Jay Martin over in Denver, he said the skill set has to be incorporated alongside medical, driving, and hard skills as well. So just as we go down that path, so we should have our other thing.
If you feel real quick, I wanted to just kind of tie into that with the comment that I put in there is to that last question that you brought up. Watching budgets throughout the next couple of months is going to be key. So that would be something to consider discussing in panels. What we've seen over COVID is budgets shifting. And now once we get back to it, to see how that budget, we're all anxious to have it go back to where it was on my side, at least, with travel security being one of our main services. But is it? Our company is going to go back to the way it was. Are they going to be able to go back to the way it was now that they've shifted budgets over more into cyber and everything else? So it's going to be, I'm anxious to see how it goes. And like Ricardo said, we have to look at other companies that are already doing it to kind of see how our clients and companies are going to adapt. So that might be something to consider there as well.
No, good point. Noted. I'll bring it up next week, and we can thrash it out. One topic I'd love to explore more is the hostile termination in a remote work environment. Because anyway, but that's not where we're going right now. We're almost out of time. Joe, you mentioned you were on Chris and Chuck's podcast. I love that podcast. What do you see as the managed security service of the future looking like?
Yeah, it's a great one. Conversations and close protection. Again, we go by the CHIP acronym, right? So we said comprehensive, holistic, intelligent, and then focused mostly on prevention. And I think another way to give you food for thought is basically go back to the basics. What are you protecting? Not a lot of people ask that question very thoroughly. And then protection from what? And then only then do you start creating your strategy and allocating your scarce resources. And what typically happens is, somebody shows up to an operation, and the principal will say, hey, but traditionally we need 7 guys. Come show up with 7 guys, like Chris said in the show. But not necessarily they need 7 guys. What is the goal again? What is the mission? Who are we protecting against? And that, I think, is relevant again for the whole for all these 3 fields we've been talking about. And then another thing that is troublesome is that we have, that I mentioned it in the podcast too, we have a problem. The biggest problem in our field, in my opinion, is that nothing ever happens here, right? And then because of that, it's difficult to sell it to the people to the leaders who need to fund your ideas. And then on the other side, just because nothing ever happens here, doesn't mean that the system you have in place is actually built to withstand a real attack. So again, going back to the basics of understanding really what it is you're protecting or securing, and then from what, as a starting point, that's a really good and important methodology that I think has to be rethinked, and polished here in a lot of organizations.
I like it, and of course it will translate very well into the cyber and MSP world, because they get a lot of solutions in search of a problem. Solutions in search of a problem. So what are you trying to protect? And if you're protecting everything, you're protecting nothing. So yeah, everyone loves a bit of sun service, so that's good. No, I like it. I like it. Well, we are now out of time, but I hope this has been an interesting look at perhaps what the MSS could be. In that, there's perennially a bit of an assumption that the MSS, it's an IT thing, it's a cyber thing. Well, it's a security thing, is what it is. So it's really important. Bill, Joe, Ricardo, and Joe, thank you very much for being such a great panel, and I hope you had a good session.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Bye, guys.
Thanks ever so much. We'll see you in the audience, and I'll see you very soon. Hopefully the IPSB as well, which will be nice. Nice comments in the audience. It's good to keep the dialogue going and get everything nicely coming together. As I previously mentioned, this event wouldn't be possible without our supporters, HackDevNet, Noble4, and Stellar Cyber. We still have Mike Godeker in the audience from HackDevNet. We still have Eric Akron from Noble4 in the audience. We still have Brian Stoner from Stellar Cyber in the audience. So that is really good news. Thank you very much. Now, let's go back a little bit to first principles. I know we've had a few new joiners as well just recently. So let's welcome Scott Algier, President of IT ISAC, to the stage, because we really need to think in a macro sense. We've been doing a lot of micro thinking, but let's think in a macro sense.